Instead of trying to write and plan the biggest thing that you can think of, write and plan something small that you can execute well as if it was a huge, big set piece. Hey everybody, my name is Nick. I'm a director and editor living in Taiwan, and today I'm going to be talking about the popular film Marry My Dead Body. This is a supernatural comedy mystery film directed by Cheng Wei-hao. And if that description of the film doesn't tip you off, this is a very overstuffed movie. This film made a good amount of money at the domestic box office, has screened internationally, and is now available on Netflix worldwide. Typically, I like to be positive about the films I review on this channel. I think it's important to understand that making a movie is a very difficult thing to do. It's a small miracle that any movie gets made. In general, I think it is way too easy for critics to point out flaws, and I think far too many reviewers are overly critical about things that maybe aren't that important. I like to focus on the positive aspects of movie making, especially when it comes to Taiwanese films, because the point of this channel, the reason I started it, was to promote Taiwanese cinema and Asian cinema worldwide to people who may not have originally been exposed to those types of movies. With that said, there are certain cases when harsh criticism is warranted and I think necessary, and I think Marry My Dead Body is one of those cases. I think this film was set up as a film that would be pushed onto commercial audiences domestically, and probably was even planned to be a film that Taiwan would promote worldwide. If you have the money and the opportunity to promote your film on a global scale, then I think you have some responsibilities in terms of quality and what you're putting out there. The concept, the idea behind this film is a very good one. In Taiwan, there's a superstition around ghost marriages. If you pick up a red envelope on the ground, red envelopes are traditionally given with money. So if you pick up a red envelope on the ground thinking that you're gonna just find some money, the superstition is that it's actually a trap set by a family of a dead person to kind of force you or coerce you into a marriage with their dead relative. So you get trapped into a ghost marriage. This film plays on that concept where a straight, slightly homophobic police officer gets trapped into a ghost marriage with a recently deceased gay man. Now this is a great concept for a variety of reasons. It plays into Taiwanese culture. It brings in a social element wherein gay marriage was recently legalized. So it takes that traditional idea of the ghost marriage and puts it in a modern context. Like, now that gay marriage can happen, what if the ghost marriage happened between two men? That's an interesting idea. And I think it's definitely one worth making a movie about. And so with this concept, there is a lot of potential. And I was thinking that this film, which could have been billed as a horror comedy, could have been something like Mr. Vampire, where superstitions are played with and the story could be creepy. And we could have this interesting comparison too, where the straight men are so afraid of gayness, and you could actually literally juxtapose the horror of the ghost with the horror that straight men feel, and then you could break down some of those barriers using comedy and some fun stuff. And that's what horror is, and horror comedy can be. It's like you use the horror element to discuss societal things in an interesting, fun, unique way. But this movie squanders the concept, in my opinion. I don't think it has anything interesting or unique to say, society, politically, anything like that. And what the movie decides to do instead of playing with this unique concept and exploring this unique concept is it gets wrapped up in the police aspect of it. So the very simple detail of the character that finds the envelope is a police officer, that becomes what this whole movie is about. And I watched this movie thinking I was going to watch a horror comedy, which is one of my favorite genres, and I ended up watching a police gangster film. And I have a real beef with Taiwanese movies and the people who produce Taiwanese movies for this very reason, because I feel like everything gets shoehorned into this cops and robbers gangster genre, and I do not understand what the obsession is with this. I feel like the only explanation that I can think of is that there's some like market research that somebody did where they're like, well, we gotta put cops and robbers into it because that's what sells, right? It's like so overstuffed with these ideas like that like this things that they think that maybe people would like. It feels like this movie script and all the concepts in it were written by ChatGPT. They were like, okay, we have this movie, how do we make people want to see it? Well, you got to put cops and robbers in it. Everything that was stuffed in the movie didn't seem natural or flowing from a real story. It just felt like things on a checklist that somebody ticked off that they felt like they needed to include to make a blockbuster film in Taiwan. So a big lesson that I think creators and people making movies can take from this is less is more. Adding in more and more elements, adding in more and more stories, more and more things to your script will not make your movie better. And that's what they did with Marry My Dead Body, and it totally ruined the movie. The movie starts with a simple concept: straight man marries gay ghost. Explore that concept to its fullest. That is enough. You can have side plots, you can have B plots, every movie has them, but they have to all work together to explore the interesting things around the theme that you set up. Gay man marries straight ghost. What are the interesting parts of that dynamic? Not, how can we add in a gangster? How can we add in like a drug deal side plot? How can we add in like an infernal affairs element where there's like a mole in this organization? Like all this stuff that is taking us away from the interesting concept rather than all of these things working together to build the interesting concept. I mean, even the idea of finding the killer of the ghost is a good one. We've seen it before. We've seen it in the movie Ghost. I feel like this movie is just like a really bad remake of the movie Ghost. But in that movie, while they are trying to find the killer, the movie still centers around the ghost and the understanding of the ghost and how the ghost has to learn to become a ghost. This movie, Marry My Dead Body, doesn't have that grounding. It's just all over the place, which is another reason why I do think maybe AI wrote it. And if AI didn't write it, then I think another thought could be that maybe this is a product of the way that people think about production and coming up with ideas today, where they are more thinking about making something into a series than a movie. So perhaps their way of thinking about script and story is in series terms, where they want to have all these different plots so they can stretch this concept out into 10 episodes. And even if the original idea was to make this as a movie, their brain is still in this mindset of we need all these stories, we need to fill out this time, we need all these different things to be going on to keep people interested. Writers are TV show brained. They're not thinking movies where we want a solid, very tight idea concept that we can work around and create a solid piece of media that stands alone at 2 hours, and that's what we have. This is the key to fixing this movie. The other hugely important thing that we can learn is that you only should put things into your story that you can execute well. So this movie opens with a car chase. Okay, fine, you want a car chase. But if you don't have the money to execute one properly, then don't say, yeah, screw it. Let's just computer generate the car chase and make one of the worst car chases in cinema history. It's completely confusing, it's laughably bad, and it's infuriating because it's so unnecessary. Why is there a car chase in this movie if they don't have the money to produce one correctly? Why don't they change it into being a foot chase, which could be just as exciting and could be a lot more fun, sticking to the tone and the theme of this movie? You can do a lot of gags with a foot chase. You can have people running in the way, jumping around, trying to unnecessarily add in this car chase, thinking that this is going to up the production value and the excitement level of this film, when really what it does is the opposite. It drags it down because you don't know how to execute it properly. Instead of trying to write and plan the biggest thing that you can think of, write and plan something small that you can execute well as if it was a huge, big set piece. Plan your set pieces around what you can make look the best. They do this again with fight scenes. They try to stuff so much action, shooting, fighting into this movie, and it's all executed terribly. Like, simplify them. Make them easier to do. So instead of a fight scene with 10 guys flailing around barely doing anything, make it a fight scene with 2 people and teach them proper choreography. Work that fight scene, make it good. So you can fix it in the writing. For example, we take the car chase and we turn it into a foot race. We take the we take this scene where a bullet nearly grazes somebody's leg, we change it into a knife because we think, okay, that will be better for us to execute. The director can also simplify to execute properly. There's a scene where the guy shoots, CG bullet bounces around, whizzes past him, and like grazes his leg near his, and almost takes it off and leaves it like a mark. And it's very silly looking. They use CGI to make it happen. Now, as a director executing this scene, I can simplify this. Immediately, I can think of a way to do this that would be less is more, right? We take that, we have him fire the gun, we have the sound of the bullet, then we show the face, the startled face of the main actor. Then we have him look down slowly and he sees the mark, the gash left of the bullet. Now, we get the same effect, we get the same tension, we don't have the cheesy crap CGI. So we use less to give more feeling. We get more out of this. If we use editing, we use technique, we use proper planning, rather than just slapping the CGI Band-Aid on every single shot we're trying to make. And that's a theme with this director. This director has a really big problem with using terrible CGI in his films. He's the director that did The Tag-Along, and that movie also has some very bad computer-generated images in it. The way they try to make the ghost scary, like when the ghost shows his real dead form, is laughably bad. The taste level is really just not there. You know, ultimately, I think Marry My Dead Body is a film for a different generation. It's a bit all over the place. There were tonal shifts kind of out of nowhere. If that's what the kids like these days, you know, I'm fine with that. I think there are some fun comedic parts of this movie, and I can see how people could enjoy watching it. The acting is very good, I will not lie. There are some really good character moments. I've had the phrase 不能相信 stuck in my head ever since watching it. You know, it's a really funny catchphrase that they use in the film. But ultimately, this movie just squanders its potential, and that's the bottom line. There are just too many ways that this film made mistakes, and I think the biggest one was focusing on the police story rather than the emotional relationships within it. Because in the end, the story never really has the impact that it should. While there are good scenes and the potential for good scenes, like there is a kind of a hint at it, scratching at the surface of a touching ending, that ending doesn't feel earned because the majority of the runtime of this film is focused on this cops and robbers kind of mystery crime part, which is not what this movie should be about. So that's my opinion of this film. If you were somebody who worked on this film and you happen to see this review, I'm sure it's not your fault. I'm sure there were other elements out of your control that contributed to the bad parts of this movie. Also, what do I know? You're working on feature films, you know, you're the big time. You know, what does it matter what a reviewer says about it, right? If you like this movie, if you didn't like this movie, let me know what you thought in the comments below. If you haven't seen it, I would say avoid this movie. You know, in the end, I think this is just not the best movie. I think there's a lot of better options for you out there. If you're into horror comedy, Mr. Vampire plays with tradition and horror and old ideas. So, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.